All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome. My name's Paul, and this is Nate, and that's Jen. We're here to talk about proficiency skills, and I want to preface this by saying if you don't know what a power standard is, or like prioritizing standards and stuff, if you don't know that, you may want to go to red or orange. Just checking. Okay. And if you have proficiency scales and you want to know how to like get that into the gradebook, you may want to go to violet. Just checking. Okay. We're here to tell you what a proficiency scale is, why you should use it, and how to build one. So what are they? Well, it's kind of like a ruler. It's a system of measurement. You say, all right, how deeply have the students acquired this knowledge? Where are they? And we can change that proficiency by raising or lowering the standards. So we have to make sure the ruler is calibrated, right? If you're measuring something, make sure you're measuring the truth. Why are we using it? Well, honestly, I think Noreen explained it really well. But it helps us give better feedback. It helps us fill in the gaps where the students don't know stuff. We can fill that in and get them to the standard. It's fair, and you can target exactly what the students can improve on. We want to make sure that you can build one today. And we've got some examples that you can look at.
Just to add, what we're showing up here is linked on the Google Doc the presentation that Noreen had sent out to everyone earlier. So if you want to refer back to this later, you have access to what we're showing up here. So this is a generic proficiency scale that our district provided for people, when they were doing summer work, to kind of as a template. And this basically just outlines, how you decide what's considered level 3, what's considered level 2, and all that stuff. So this is just, like I said, a generic one. It doesn't actually have any, subject content in it. It's just a description of what you would put in each line. So level 3 is the target learning goal, which means that's your, Iowa core curriculum standard. Okay. So again, if assuming that you've already looked at your standards for whatever your core, your content area is, and you've identified which ones you think are power standards, okay, then those power standards, that's your target. So that's your level 3. All right. So that's basically given to you after you decide your power standards. You know what to put here. Your level 2 is described as being a simpler learning goal. So I would think of that as being kind of like the building blocks, or if you're scaffolding or, building a kid up to that big idea, that's your level 3 standard. What kind of basic, either vocab terms or basic skills or recall or, identifying certain characteristics or whatever, that basic information, that basic knowledge, that knowledge level stuff, that would be your level 2. Okay, so I'll show some examples of that, but that level 2 is the more knowledge level type of thing that a student needs to know how to do to get to this level 3. All right, so you're gonna have to kind of think a little bit more about what goes into what basic skills are required to get to this level 3. So if you're teaching your course with other people, you're going to have a discussion about that. Right? And then your next line appears level 4. It's described as complex learning goal, and that just means something that's above the standard. And that could be a wide variety of things. I know in math, sometimes our level 4 is, applying a concept into a situation that's maybe, like real life modeling type problem that's above what the standard asks them to do. It might be a performance task. It might be teaching someone else how to do the level 3. It might be, something that shows the kid really knows it beyond just being able to do it, but they can actually do do something with it, apply it, teach someone else about it, that kind of thing. All right, and then these other lines, the 3.5, the 2.5, the 1.5, the 1, the 0.5, you don't really, you're not writing anything in those spots because those are predetermined. So like, for example, level 1 says, with help, partial success at level 2 or 3 content. So that means if you've already filled in your level 3 and your level 2, then level 1 is already defined for you. It's just partial success with help, right? With those things that you already filled in here. So you're not really putting any standard stuff into these other, 3.5 or 2.5 or 1 level stuff. They're just, that's where a student would score if they're able to show partial success out of 2 or 3, the stuff that you did fill in. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so you're really power standard level 3, basic knowledge stuff that leads up to that level 2, and then you're above and beyond level 4, and that's all you really have to do to write proficiency scales, decide those things. Okay, so there are a couple links on this slide just to give you some ideas about what proficiency scales look like. So I'll show you two examples. One is if you go to Marzano Research's his page, they have a bank of proficiency scales for most content areas and most standards. So if I just go and do a search for, say, math and measurement and data, and let's say I want something about representing data. Okay, if I hit search, it'll show me, some of the ones in their bank, different grade levels that would meet, that would match up with that standard. So if I click on one of these, I'll be able to see a sample proficiency scale. So this sample is, they took the standard of collecting and representing data using pictures or picture graphs to answer questions about the data collected. So that was their standard. Right? So that was their level 3. And then the things listed down here, what they thought was necessary, the basic knowledge to get to that. And then, your level 4. So anyway, you can probably find samples that you can pull ideas from as far as especially if you're struggling with a particular power standard and how to break it down. You might look at examples there. All right. The other example I'll show you. These are just some that the math department at the high school has written. So. Yeah. Like here's one. See if I can shrink this. All right, so we actually left the notation in ours. So this is what we put in as the meeting target, our level 3. These are the actual Iowa Core numbers and stuff, which I don't know if that's a good thing, but so those were, we just took the standard straight out of the Iowa Core, and and then we decided this one was graphing trigonometric functions, like graphing sine waves and cosine waves and stuff like that. That was the standard. So our lower level stuff was knowing what amplitude and wavelength and period and equilibrium, what those words mean. And also looking at graphs that are already done and analyzing them. So if you look at, instead of making a graph, if you can look at one that's already been drawn for you, if you can identify its amplitude and things like that, that was a lower level. All right, and then our above and beyond was, can you write graph and write equations for trigonometric functions that model complex real life situations. So. Anyway, you can look at those samples if you're feel like that would help when you get a little time here to write your own. All right. So do you want to use your computer? Or you want I should also add, there's the examples I was just showing from the math ones. There's a blank, if you go to that same place where this presentation is linked on that document that Noreen sent out, there's also a link to a blank proficiency scale template. So if you want to start, when you have some time to work, if you want to start actually typing instead of writing by hand, you can go to that, to the template. It's a Google Doc that's got just blank proficiency scales, and you can start typing stuff in there if you want. Please, it's kind of like the rainbow thing that she had. Please make a copy for yourself, though, if you're going to do that, so it doesn't change it for everyone.
All right, so the rest of this is, I guess, just starting to have a conversation and to think about proficiency scales. First of all, to take a power standard, I think one of the questions that came up in the last session was, well, we already have a rubric. Here's my rubric for how to measure if a kid can do CPR. That's an isolated skill. What's the bigger standard? And so then we talked about, well, it's health, literacy, and so, okay, here's all the things you teach to know that a kid can walk away and is functionally health literate. What does that look like at a level 3? To show that they're a functionally health literate adult or kid, what does that look like? What should they be able to know and be able to do? And so it's taking that standard and looking at it as a whole and not breaking it down. That doesn't mean you have to get rid of rubrics. It's just meaning that when you create a rubric for a specific task or something to demonstrate their knowledge, for example, create a board game to show the Oregon Trail, I don't know. That's what standard is that measuring? If a kid can successfully do that, that means that they can what later in life, or what can they do to go to that next level? What does that fall under? So find that power standard. One of ours that I know we're working on right now is theme and central idea. One of the nice things too that I always think about when I'm thinking of the 4-3-2-1 scale is always start at that 3. When it comes to theme and central idea, what is it a kid absolutely has to know and be able to do at the 7th grade level in order to be ready to do that at the 8th grade level at the next step, because then their 3 becomes a little bit different. And so there's 2 sites that I think are helpful. The first one is Iowa, the new ICC site that Noreen linked, has core subjects. Literacy and math have a little more right now than science and social studies, but your standards are in there. So the nice thing is that I can go by literacy, and right now one of our standards is literature, and it's key ideas and details. And so I can view this standard of determining a theme and a central idea, and then it breaks it down for me. Now these are what they call Webb's depth of knowledge, and if you go to Iowa State's website, here's Webb's depth of knowledge. He has 4 of them, and then here's Bloom's along the side, and how they kind of match up. So just being able to list vocabulary words and use them is still at the metacognitively, they're recalling them, but that's still at the lowest level of the ladder. All right, that's a foundation they need to get to the next step. So Heather just showed me this last, so I'm not, but I thought it was a great visual for showing how you move up that ladder metacognitively, as well as the verbs that we use to kind of determine what we want kids to be able to do. But if you go back to what I was showing you with the Iowa core, if I look at, for example, what I want kids to be able to know and do, I could use these to start to determine what proficiency looks like. So to me, for them to be able to just explain or how to explain office purpose might be a 3, but just to recognize it in a piece of text would be, to me, a 2. They could maybe pull it out, but they may not be able to tell me why. Summarizing information from multiple sources, to me, that would be a level 4, meaning, okay, you gave me one piece of text, I can do this, I can identify the theme, the central idea, I can explain to you, I can maybe cite some pieces of text, but guess what? I can go above and beyond, and I can find it in multiple pieces of text. Or I can go to Hunger Games and I can see the movie, and I can say, hey, I just saw the movie this week, and it reminds me that I think the theme in Hunger Games is the same as the theme in the story that we just read this past week in class. So they start to make those connections outside of the classroom, which I think Noreen said was kind of what that 4 is, without you having to guide them at all. And so it's those, I still really use Bloom's. I know some people have kind of, but I really still use Bloom's verbs to guide my thinking when I'm thinking what a student would be able to do. And in front of me in the classroom, whether that's on a piece of paper or in a project, it's what they do outside of that classroom on making their own connections that becomes that level 4. That makes sense. So those are a couple of, Bloom's would help with some of the verbs. You know, what do they need to know at the knowledge comprehension level, which is kind of the bottom of the ladder, to move them to the middle of the ladder, which is where we kind of at least like them to get to, is that proficient. And again, not correlating that into a grade, it's just what do we want a kid to be able to know and be able to do, and then that messy work gets done by the people in purple. No. But then those conversations can come at least once you know what a kid is able to do. So
we'll just leave this up here. I think we just want the rest of the time to be so for you to actually try to write a proficiency scale, or if you already have your curriculum kind of power standard and the scale's written, maybe you're here to revise. But kind of like we said, just the basic steps are know what your power standard is, flip that into level 3, get the knowledge level skills. So like the Bloom's taxonomy thing, you know, what are the things they need to identify or recognize or define, recall, you know, that's going to be your level 2 type verbiage, right? And when you get to the next step is to fill in your level 4. And if you can do those, then you've got a proficiency scale. All right, and then you go to green and you write your tests. Right, but the proficiency scale is there to help you know what to put on your test and how to level your test. So.
And there's a blank template back to that kind of orange-white one that Nate showed earlier, linked on our facilitation guide. And then, or just however you would set up a rubric in Word document, set it up that way too if you're kind of stuck on what it should look like. And then you can kind of start building from there. But the rest of the time, I don't even know what the rest of the time is, but is yours to kind of start to process through or look at some of the proficiency scales you may have.
Yeah. So
That's blank.
This is what your blank template would look like if you click on that link that's in Noreen's presentation. So if you start writing one, you want to do it digitally, use that to begin.
Make a copy.
Yeah, make a copy for yourself and then start typing.